Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Closet Core Crew Live. I believe this is our 6th installment. Are we at month 6 already?
Yeah.
So today we thought we'd just have some fun with the concept of color palettes, and particularly that idea of like seasons of color palettes. And this has been interpreted in all kinds of different ways. I think the first book I remember is Carol Jackson's book from the 80s, Color Me Beautiful. I remember my mom being swatched with scarves at some point in a mall and buying a bunch of blouses in jewel tones because she was told to. And so this isn't at all a new idea. And I have been referring to this blog post by Gabrielle Arruda because we are not experts. And Cassie and I have been kind of trying to figure out our own palettes. I recently had kind of a revelation. I thought I was a winter or a spring because I'm really attracted to those colors. And after like digging into this a little bit, I came to realize I believe I'm an autumn, which was news to me. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's always a game of like, what colors do you like? What do you feel you're most like yourself when you're wearing? So, I mean, this is all just for fun. And I think to give ourselves like a different perspective maybe on, and like, I know personally I was in a little bit of a rut because I tend to just buy the things over and over again that I know I gravitate towards. And so it kind of pushed me to go, wait, do I like orange? Maybe I need to wear orange. So I think it's fun to dig into. Again, obviously we're not at all experts, but we thought today it would be fun to experiment on Cassie as a guinea pig. And we're gonna go through this sort of like logic that she has here laid out in terms of kind of narrowing it into a color palette of colors that sort of just do you favors, you know, and that ultimately I think what she's sort of saying is that the colors that look best on you will make your features stand out, like your eyes pop. They'll tend to make your skin look a little clearer, a little more even. Just bring out all of those things that are sort of like your best attributes and sort of neutralize the things that maybe you don't want to emphasize. So the first step is reining in whether or not you tend to fall on the warm spectrum or on the cool spectrum. A lot of these books, particularly the ones from the 80s, don't necessarily cover every skin tone, ethnicity. They were, by and large, generally speaking, only included white women. So obviously there are limits to that. And I personally thought the warm, cool thing had to do more with the pigment of your skin or whatever. And I just assumed because I'm pale that I was a cool. And that actually isn't necessarily part of it. So the first recommendation that they do, that they give for this in all instances was to use natural light. For the purposes of today's live, and so you can see what we're doing, we have lights on in the studio, but ultimately you want to be in natural light, not direct sunlight, and they suggest not doing it at like golden hour because that sort of makes everybody look more or less the same, that warm light. So this is kind of generally speaking good light for this, I think. And so generally you want to look at the person, and hair and eye color is part of it, but we mainly want to focus on the skin tone and the undertones of the skin is what we're looking for first. So one of the ways that they suggest doing this is to look at your veins. And it's a bit confusing because some people's veins really, like my veins pop out a lot more than yours are. Useless heroin addict. But I think generally, like you were kind of thinking you were more green.
Yeah.
But then when we looked at compared to mine, she's actually a little bit more blue purple tones. So that's suggesting right out the gate that she has cooler undertones. And so, can everyone hear okay? Are we doing good on sound? Okay, great. Okay, we're trying to get better at that, you guys. So I think we've kind of established, and then so beyond that, they also say the jewelry test. But I think the jewelry test is tricky, we were saying, because we gravitate to what we like. And if you have beautiful family heirlooms, like my wedding ring is white gold, I'm not throwing it away because it's not matching my undertones. So, you know, I think like that is not necessarily the best. And honestly, I think everybody can wear, like, does all my jewelry look better with a tan? Yeah, right? So that's also part of it. So we're gonna kind of skip that as an arbiter, but generally a good test for the warm cool is to take something, and luckily we work in a fabric store, hey? We have all this fabric, so we're so lucky. But you can use anything around your house. You want something that doesn't have too much of a pattern. And just, you want to get it up as close as you can to her, to your face. She was suggesting covering the hair, but I think in our instance, it's part of it too, because how often are you walking around in a white bald cap? You know what I mean? Like, generally speaking, you're going to be working with the hair you've got on your head, so we might as well factor it in. So I'm going to start with the one that we suspect might not do Cassie any favors. You want to take something that's really obviously warm, like in this case she gave the example of a really saturated orange, and then something that's a little bit cooler, like this magenta. And despite being what you might think is a warm color, this actually has much cooler tones to it. So we're going to put this on Cassie, and we're just going to take a little look. She looks beautiful in everything, obviously. This is never a comment on that, but I can see sort of right out the gate, it's not doing your eyes any favors, and I don't think it's really the right tone for your skin. So now let's look at the cooler tone that I suspect is going to be the winner. Yeah, let's get that orange right out of there. And oh my gosh, instantly you have foundation on, your eyes are sparkling. So I think that's, we're kind of lucky with her because I don't think that there's much of a choice between the two. This feels very obvious to me, and your physical aversion to the orange is probably a sign that it's not your fave. Well, that's good, because it's like you can wear whatever you want, but I think that that is just obviously much happier, feels a lot more comfortable with her skin. And so we can kind of establish then, you can sort of see that I've split most of our colors here. This is the cooler side of the palette, and then this is sort of the warmer side of the palette. And so I think probably for Cassie's sake, we'll focus now on the cooler side. We could go into more examples of why these maybe aren't doing her any favors. But I think the next test they wanted to go into, though, is once you've kind of established, okay, I think cooler, warmer, you want to take colors in the same family that are on different ends of the spectrum. So this is about as cool as a blue can be. And then you would also take, oh no, sorry, first I was gonna do that, before we get into that, we're gonna further establish the undertones. So these are our neutrals. So we've seen like color, bright saturated color, what that does. But when we're going with more neutral, this would be obviously on the warm end of the neutral spectrum. And this is as neutral as it gets with a gray. So again, we'll just sort of look at the examples. This being the warmer color, I gravitate towards this color. But again, just not, it's picking up the red a little bit in her skin a little, so you can see the warm undertones are coming out, and not really, it just doesn't feel as natural, shall we say, or flattering as a cool tone. Which, it's so funny, because this gray, I love this gray, but you put this on me and I look about 4 days into COVID. And this on you, it's just instantly, your skin looks calmer and less sort of reactive with that color. And again, your eyes, the blue and gray of your eyes just really pop out. So you can kind of see, that's a really good test. And then something like this brown here would be more in the neutral. So this is another thing with, if it wasn't so obvious to us whether she had warm or cool undertones, there is more neutral tones, and you have to kind of get into finding something that has, see how this brown, it's warm in the sense that it's a brown, but there's so much gray in it and feels so cool. So if she was going to go in the brown spectrum, I think this would be a much more attractive brown for you to choose. And again, you just see instantly how her under eyes kind of calm down, and I don't see any redness around her nose. Like, it just really is very soothing. So I think that's that's fully established now that Cassie's cool toned, and we're probably not even gonna bother wading so much into these warm, which you're not attracted to anyway. So there you go, let's narrow it down, right? Because, so within, I mean, it seemingly, like, we went into this and we could just go into a black hole in terms of, like, I think there were 16 seasons that they broke it down. So each season was then further broken down. Now, am I interested in discovering there's only 4 colors that look good on me? No, of course. I'm gonna wear whatever, like, black isn't my neutral, but I have all these black clothes. Of course I'm wearing black clothes. I'm not getting rid of black. So, but in my case, being, I think, an autumn, the navy would be sort of more my neutral, which is great. And then I was like, oh, that's why I have my entire closet's navy. So there you go. So now going into more, breaking down that cool end of the spectrum, the seasons that correspond to the cooler colors are winter and summer. And so it's not to do with how warm the season is outside or anything like that, which is very confusing for me. Like, spring, summer are the warm ones, right? But the general rule with the difference between a summer and a winter is that a winter has more contrast. So darker hair, paler skin, maybe blue eyes, dark hair, sort of that, which we suspect Cassie might be on the summer end of the spectrum, but this is gonna be sort of more definitive. So as you can see, if we go for the blues, this is a very cool blue. I think it looks good, but if we were to take a blue that was a little less saturated and more in a more muted tone. So I think this blue would be more of a summer blue. It's lighter, it's got more gray in it, which generally is the difference between saturated and muted. On the chroma scale, a saturated color has more color in it, and a muted color has more gray in it. And so you can just see how happy, look how happy.
I also love this color.
Well, there you go, literally happy. But I think that there's probably a reason that we do gravitate towards those colors more, because ultimately we just feel more.
Yeah, you feel good.
Yeah, and you look in the mirror and you go, oh, I got a little extra sleep or something, you know? So I think generally we do tend to gravitate towards colors that flatter us. And I think that if you look at your closet and you see an overwhelming color, it probably is something that is doing you favors. So this is where you can get really granular, because so on this end of the spectrum, if we're saying now, okay, Cassie's well, we know she's cool. Her undertones are cool. Then from there, what would separate her into the difference between a winter and a summer is that the winter tones are more saturated and the summer tones are more muted, aka have more gray. So something like this, which, yes, a green is warmer than a blue, this is both a cool green as well as a muted cool green. So I think we're gonna see, and oh my gosh, are we right? I even see with this color, well, I don't know if you can see that far away, but your eyes just got greener too. And I see the blue, but also like they have like a teal and like a light green yellow fleck in there that comes out with this. So again, it's not about like, oh, I can never wear that color again. It's just about finding the right shade of that color so that you're sort of like, and like for example, Talk about pinks that I cannot wear. This is
I
just
love
the
that
worst.
pink.
And this
That's
looks
like
so
my
great on
color,
you.
yeah.
And so again, it's a cool pink. It doesn't have a lot of yellow in it. And it also is quite dusty.
Yeah.
Like those muted colors are things that you think, if they were a paint color, they'd be dusty, whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And again, yeah, you can just see how that allows her the natural warm tones of her skin to come through with and not competing. Again, the thing I see first is your eyeballs. And I think generally speaking, that is something that we want to convey. So that is looking really good to me. For example, let's just have some fun with this. Which of these colors is your least favorite? The red or the...
Oh, I think that green.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't, this is like one of my favorite colors on the planet. I'm trying to talk myself out of painting my entire basement this color right now. Avocado.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty color.
It's a pretty color,
Yeah.
but again, what I see first is not the same. Your eyes aren't really coming through. It's funny, I'm even seeing darkness around your nose, the shadows that it's bringing out. There's even some greenness around your mouth.
Oh, great.
Yeah, which really was not, isn't that awful? You know,
No, it's funny.
It's so, but it really is interesting because it is just a matter of seeing sort of like, what am I seeing first? What's popping out at me? And is that what I'm sort of looking to convey? So in that wheelhouse, and again, it's not about a color because this, like, I don't know if you like yellow.
I love yellow.
You do.
I don't wear it a lot, but I do really like it.
Yeah, and I think that, like, again, it's sort of hard to think of a cool yellow because you're like, but how? But again, it's just that in this case, it doesn't have the red in it that an orangier yellow would have. And so you can sort of see immediately, it's like that thing where you hold a buttercup up and see if someone's sweet. Mm-hmm. It's reflecting up in your skin tone, and I think that is absolutely a yellow that
Maybe I need more yellow.
I do not gravitate towards yellow either. It's just not something I tend to like, but I think it's all about finding the right shade.
Yeah, I think so.
And understanding sort of where you fall in that. So that's pretty much where we got to with that. I think it's sort of an endlessly fun journey. This is something that you can take into makeup, into, once you kind of like establish your colors, and if you sort of have that little, when you go fabric shopping or even clothing shopping, if you just have that little bit of knowledge behind you and you sort of have that understanding of like where these things, where these things came from in terms of, that just, you'll have that little bit of knowledge so you're not just going in and feeling like you're buying that same thing at rote again and again. And that maybe you open yourself up to a new color that you didn't know was in your wheelhouse, yellow or whatever. So when you look at this, are you just like, is this your happy place?
Yeah.
So you can see, these are what we established from that pile, are cool, muted tones, and it was, when we looked up this palette, this was exactly a soft summer.
Yeah.
So within even the further, so the difference in the summers, hold on, let me look this up, because there was within summer, it was bright summer,
Bright summer, soft summer,
and
cool summer, right?
cool summer, right. And we discovered that sort of once you get into those further subcategories, then you do start to factor in your eye color and your hair color a little more. And those, it was the light summer was essentially blondes.
Yeah.
And then the cool summer was essentially dark, like Snow White vibes, like very pale eyes and dark hair. So I think you were falling in that soft summer where there's less contrast happening. But Cassie obviously has a warm root to her hair, but we were saying at one point she went blonde. and you felt like natural as a blonde, whereas I dyed my hair white blonde, and nothing has ever looked farther from God's intended plan. And so, yeah, I think that generally speaking, like from a winnowing it down point, starting with that idea of warm, cool, breaking it further then again into saturated versus unsaturated, more muted tones. And then, I mean, again, how granular do you want to get? Yeah. If you're picking like your wedding dress color or something, I guess maybe you could get that specific. But I think for most people, oops, sorry, I don't know if I just smashed the sound. I think for most people, that sort of gives you, generally speaking, a wheelhouse to work in. So for cool tones, the neutral sort of rule of thumb is that whites are cooler tones, creams are warmer tones, black is a cooler family neutral, navy is a warmer neutral. And like brown and gray, again, obviously fall into that. So the farther the colors get away from your face and your skin, sort of the less they matter. Am I picking my shoe color based on my skin? Most likely not. But again, if you are kind of building a capsule or you're thinking in terms of your color palette and you do want those sort of neutrals to work with those colors, then you kind of know, okay, if I'm buying a basic, I'm going to get it in black, gray, white. Those are sort of the colors that work with, well, non-colors, but those are the tones that work with the colors in your palette. And then if you're in the warmer palette, you might choose navy, brown for your like accessories and things. And then that way you're sort of guaranteeing that all those things are sort of gonna work together. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's an infinitely fun thing to play with and to explore. And this changes. Like my mom and I were talking about this, and she's 76 or whatever. And as her hair started to gray and she started dyeing it blonder, and the contrast between her hair and skin got less contrasty and she became more colored. She actually totally changed her season or whatever and realized she was picking out clothes based on her black hair from the 80s and not sort of on her updated look. So I think this is a really fun, if you've gone through a color, a hair change, or you're at a new phase of your life, I think it's just so fun to challenge what you think you know about yourself and really try it out. Like I said, when I looked at those autumn colors, I thought, that's not me at all. Because I am actually much more attracted to these really saturated colors. But then when I started looking into it, I was like, oh yeah, I love all those olive greens. I mean, I'm always in those. Yeah. And then I realized the navy thing. And so I think it is just a different way of thinking about something that maybe you've got a little stuck in a rut about. And so we encourage you to play with those resources. There's all kinds of, I mean, if you just Google color season palette,
yeah,
there's tons out there, and there's lots of different ways of playing with it. And that's a great use for your fabric stash. Mm-hmm. And it's also a really fun way to look at the way you collect clothes and fabric in our case as sewists, and sort of seeing like putting things into families. I think it's a really great way too to think about makes and what work together. To sort of, this was such a fun exercise for us to split things up into the cool and the warm families, just even starting with that and kind of going, oh right, these colors sort of work together, and then maybe building some of your makes from those.
Even looking at these, I'm like, yeah, that's like, you could wear those all. You could make pieces out of these colors and wear them, and it would look really nice together.
Yeah, exactly.
Just looking at it.
Yeah, that's sort of it. And like, you know, then you're like, oh, maybe this is the pants and this is the top, and I never would have thought of making those pieces. But I think if you know that they're already going to work together and sort of they're going to be something you reach for again and again because of the way they make you feel. I think it's just another way of making sure you're not making something just because it's trendy or the color's popular or whatever, but ultimately it's not something you're going to feel like yourself in. So I think it's great to kind of do this exercise, get a sense of like, and then maybe next time you're out shopping, you'll be like, oh, that's my color, and I'm going to try that out.
Or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So I hope that was fun and helpful, and please let us know in the forum if you have any personal revelations about this. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Amy.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks, Cassie.